Draymond Green is one of the most hated, if not the most hated player in the NBA. Not many people outside of the Warriors fanbase like him, and that makes sense. Over the years, he's drawn a lot of controversy, from kicking people in the nuts to getting into it with the refs and even getting arrested for allegedly assaulting a couple of people. However, Draymond has developed into a perennial all-star and one of the best defenders in the league, even though very few thought he would throughout his entire life. How's it going, fellas? My name's Andy, and this is the story of Draymond Green. Born in 1990 in Saginaw, Michigan, Draymond spent the majority of his time playing basketball after school. In first grade, he would play against the third and fourth graders, even though he usually wasn't invited. As he got older, he would still insist on playing others who were older than him because he wanted to get better. Draymond wanted to play against tougher competition, and at the rec center, he refused to get off the court when they told him that he was too young to play. He said, "One of the guys pushed me off the stage, another guy would hit me in the head with a basketball, that's just how it was in our neighborhood." This was one of the first occurrences of Draymond developing the chip on his shoulder. Growing up, other players looked down on him, at this stocky, overweight young kid, and just dismissed him. But his mother instilled that confidence in Draymond that would eventually stick with him for the rest of his life. It was at the Civ Recreation Center where Draymond would learn how to trash talk. Everyone there was talking smack 24/7, and if you didn't talk back, then they continued to pick on you. He said before that, "That's where all the trash talking came from. You picked that up as a kid, and that's part of the player that I am today." It's getting inside someone's head. A lot of people can't handle it. Playing at that rec center forced you to have some thick skin, or else it would have been a bad time. So for all those wondering why Draymond is so loud, there's your answer. That same trash talking, that same intensity from his youth carried over to his high school career, his college career, and finally to the NBA. It was something that he grew up doing and realized that it was a way for him to get an advantage over his competition. As a kid, Draymond also hung out with a lot of former Pistons players growing up. He was friends with Joe Dumars' son, so he was able to meet players like Rip Hamilton, Rasheed Wallace, Chauncey Billups, basically all the guys on the mid-2000s Pistons. But no player was more influential than Ben Wallace. He was Draymond's favorite player in the league because of his incredible defensive prowess. Wallace was also an undersized big man who never backed down from anybody and held his own against taller players. Dre even got an afro because of Big Ben, saying that, "I remember days wearing that afro thinking I was Ben Wallace. He was locking the entire NBA up, even Shaq." For the next few years and throughout high school, Ben would be a mentor for Draymond. Just like him, Ben was also heavily doubted throughout his life, even going undrafted in 1996. Nobody believed he could play in the NBA, let alone become a four-time Defensive Player of the Year. They had very similar paths, and Dre looked up to him and continued to talk to him even after he left the Pistons. Anyway, Draymond had a great high school career. In his junior and senior seasons, he led Saginaw High School to a combined 53-2 record, averaging over 20 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 blocks per game. Despite being a great player in high school, scouts felt like his skills would not translate very well. He was only a 4-star recruit according to Scout.com and a 3-star recruit according to Rivals.com, only being ranked as a top 30-ish player in the country. Usually players in this situation would go to a lower Division I college, but Draymond got accepted into Michigan State. It was a huge surprise to everyone, except for Draymond himself. He knew he was good and very confident, and at Michigan State he showed it. Although his first 2 years were rough, coming off the bench and not getting many minutes, he eventually became the Big Ten Player of the Year and the NABC Player of the Year in his senior season. With averages of 16 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists, Dre led the Spartans to the Big Ten championship and ended his college career as the all-time leader in rebounds in the school's history. So with a very successful college resume under his belt, Dre expected to go pretty high in the draft. But he fell to the second round and only got drafted with the 35th overall pick. When asked about how he felt about getting drafted that low, he responded with, "It pissed me off. National Player of the Year in college, and I go in the second round? That doesn't even add up." It was one of those things where I was like, okay, I'll prove them wrong again. But then it's also like a slap in the face. How much more do I need to prove? He could even name every single player who was drafted ahead of him, which is kinda crazy. But it's things like this that made him the player he is today. He couldn't have gotten this far without people doubting him. And looking back at the 2012 draft, he definitely should have went higher. But But the thing is, his skill set was very awkward for a player of his size. The scouts were worried that he had no place in the NBA. Now, they were obviously incorrect, but it made sense at the time. He's about 6'6" without shoes on and did not have any standout skills besides his weak side defense and rebounding, and they were skeptical those would translate into the NBA because of his size. Dre was also a bit on the heavy side, weighing about 240 to 250 pounds and wasn't very athletic and wasn't good at finishing at the rim, even in college. So in the NBA, with all these super athletic guards and wing players and taller, stronger rim protectors, he wasn't projected to do well. He did not have a true position either, which was concerning. But as he arrived to the NBA, and by the end of his rookie and sophomore seasons, he quickly changed everybody's opinion about him. He had his biggest opportunity on the Warriors after David Lee went down with an injury. Dre was forced to get more minutes, and that's all he needed to prove to the coaches that he was going to be their new future starting power forward. Very few people knew this at the time, but it turns out not having a true position is exactly the direction the NBA was heading towards. And Draymond Green was one of the pioneers of the modern era of basketball. A dynamic power forward who can guard 4 or 5 different positions, make pinpoint passes, and hit the occasional three-point shots. A couple years later, and he won his first ever Defensive Player of the Year, which was given to him by his own childhood idol, Ben Wallace. Despite all of the doubts, all of the people who said he wouldn't make it, Dre overcame all the noise and cemented himself as one of the most unique players the NBA has ever seen. We've seen players who could defend multiple positions before, we've seen power forwards who were good passers before, but Draymond is in his own category. Even though pretty much everybody outside the Warriors fanbase dislike him, let's be honest, they would kill to have him on their own team. He might not be capable of carrying his own team every single night, but he's the perfect complementary piece and the perfect glue guy. He does all the little things that other players don't want to do and gives it 110% every second he's out there. And that's all, folks. That sums up the story of Draymond Green. No matter how much you hate him, there's no question that every team needs a player like him if they want to contend for a title. What do you guys think of him as a player? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.